What is up, everybody? It is your local Ottawa fan, and I'm here today to talk to you about the 2-1 overtime loss to the Boston Fleet. I'm going to quickly go through the game, and then I'm going to get to the two big points that I have. The start of the game, Boston did a very good job of keeping us in our own end. We were stuck in our own end for quite a while before we actually got out. We do get out of our own end, though, and when we do, we draw a penalty. Our power play has been struggling, and I'm going to talk about special teams. But our power play has been struggling. And this is a power play where you need to, you want to set the tone early. We need a goal. We've had 2 goals on the power play all season. This power play looks good, but a lot of our power plays have looked good and not ended in results. But this time, Daniel Serdachny wires one, tipped home by Victoria Bach, 1-0 Ottawa. Victoria Bach and Daniel Serdachny have had amazing chemistry, and every day, every game, I get more and more happy with the trade because I really like the Bach Serdachny chemistry that we've had. They both played really, really well. So far, it's been a good move. This would be our only power play of the game. I want you to keep that in mind. Right before the penalty expires, we score. So I'm talking right at the end, and then we never again see power play. We take a penalty of our own. Boston almost passes it into their own empty net. Sadly, they don't. And we go on the kill. And guess what? We kill it off. And this was a game by Gwyneth Phillips where I'm a lot more comfortable that we don't need to just bank on Mashmeyer. We don't need to give her a crazy heavy workload. Phillips played a great game. She was the best player on the team today. The biggest bright spot on this team had to be Phillips. And it's not to say that the team played bad, because I'm going to get into it. They did not play bad. And they got a point out of it, which again, that is a good thing. But Gwyneth Phillips played really, 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 really well. And, for, a team that's so used to Mashmeyer almost always being in net, it's nice to know that our backup is still really solid and can, compete with the best of the best. I think we have the best goalie tandem in the league. I think we've got elite goaltending. I mean, you've heard it all before, but I think Mashmeyer right now is playing as the best goalie in the league. I wouldn't be completely shocked if we have 2 top 5 goalies in the league. Or even top, I don't want to, I want to see more out of Gwyneth before I start saying, anything above that, because, the sample size is small. But even in the loss to Minnesota, I thought she looked solid. Yeah, there was, it wasn't perfect. But, I thought, what, okay, this is something we can work with. And this game more than proved that right. But Boston gets a chance with Phillips on her back. They score. They tie the game 1-1. Late in the period, we take another penalty. We do a good job of winding down the period. Actually get a good chance of our own on the penalty kill. And that ends the first period. The second period, we kill off what little remains of the first penalty. And after the kill, momentum's on our side. We're spending most of the time in the Fleet's zone. We're generating pressure. We generated a bunch of pressure, a bunch of momentum. And despite having all control, they are keeping us on edge because they can not score. We get chance after chance. We pressure them, and it remains 1-1. But a good chunk of the second period, we were significantly outplaying Boston. But I was on the edge of my seat because it was a 1-1 game. Despite how well we were playing, we weren't breaking through. And we had them doubled in shots at one point. Nearly halfway through the game. Had them doubled in shots. And Boston has basically sustained no momentum. They had no sustained momentum in our zone. They would maybe get to our zone for like a shift, but not even a shift or two before the puck comes right back out, back to the Fleet zone. For like the first half of the second period, that was the story. 1-1. We were looking faster. We were looking stronger. Emily Clark had a huge night with multiple really big hits, which I love to see that out of Emily Clark. First off, I'm a huge Emily Clark fan. I'm very vocal about this. Shout out to Triz. Follow Triz on Twitter. Absolutely great for the Ottawa Charge content. And yeah, Emily Clark. I'm a full-blown Clark believer, and Clark had a monster game, I think, in terms of physicality. And it's not to say that Clark isn't usually physical, but today I especially noticed it. We were winning, it felt like every puck battle in their end, we were winning. And we were constantly forcing puck battles, even when there otherwise might not have been one, where another lesser team would have just kind of let it go. And we sustained pressure really well. And what was in the back of my mind? Last season, we would have games like this. We would play really well. The game would maybe even out, go to overtime, and we'd lose. I'd seen that story so many times last season. We've won a bunch of 1-goal games, 3-game winning streak. I was like, is this team different? And the thing is, I'm not saying that this team isn't different. But if we'd won this game, boy, would it have felt like a proper step forward and not a cautious optimism, because I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm not ready to start celebrating yet. I'm not. Despite the fact that we're third in the league and looking good and playing decent hockey, I'm not ready to call us a playoff team yet. Because I saw last season. I remember last season. I know it could happen when you don't separate yourselves from the pack. And when games like these, games where... Because here's the thing. Even if we only, we win in overtime, we only get a 1-point difference. When this game goes to overtime, ultimately, it decides, does Boston get 1 point closer to us, or do we get 1 point further? But that is huge. The difference between us getting even just 1 point further than our opponents versus our opponents getting 1 point closer to us, we got to distance ourselves. We can't let them slowly get 1 point here and 1 point there and 1 point here, and then next thing you know, we're the team in 5th place. That's what happened last season. Those small little losses here and there that could have otherwise been wins, catching up with us, costing us. I don't want that to happen again this season. And like I said, we're playing really, really well, and we have classic Ottawa hockey happen. Boston scores late in the second. We're down 2-1. But that ain't no goal. That was a kick. And the boos are raining down from TD Place. Can I just say, I love these fans here in Ottawa. 8,000. I think it was 8,295. So almost 8,300 people at the game. Best fans in the league, bar none. And we made it known that there is no way that is a goal. It gets reviewed, it gets overturned. Again, okay. Sometimes things like that burned us before, but no. Working in our favor. We go in tied 1-1. Clark had one last really good chance, and it doesn't happen. And going into the third, it's on the one hand, we're lucky it's tied. That kick in saved us. But on the other hand, I felt we had the better period. I felt through 2 periods, we were the better team. And that Boston was lucky that we didn't score. The third period, I think both teams played relatively well. Both teams had momentum. You know what both teams didn't have? I'll tell you what both teams didn't have. Penalties. It's a bit more even. Halfway through, we take a penalty. Last thing we need. Immediately Fleet have a dangerous chance. Great save by Phillips, and the PK is great. We even apply some pressure despite being down a player. We kill it off. We get a one-timer chance that's saved. Again, looking good. All right, it's a tight period. Third period, again, I felt like the second period was our best period. I felt like there was a lot more pushback from Boston. The third period was really back and forth. The second half of the second period, I felt Boston had a good response. But I still felt overall through two periods, we looked like the better team. By the end of the third period, I was like, okay, these are pretty evenly matched teams. But you know what happens at the end of the third period? If you guessed we take a penalty, ding, 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 you would be correct. Yes, we kill it off again. But if you're counting with me, that is 4 penalties to their 1. That is 6 extra minutes in the box. That is 10% of a hockey game. And this is not an isolated incident. I gotta double check my stats, but I'm pretty sure in our past 2 games, we have 8 penalties taken to 1 power play. For a difference of a mammoth 14 minutes. We're knocking on full period territory. Being in the box is not going to win you games. Just because we aren't getting scored on doesn't mean that we're doing fine. Because time that we otherwise could have spent in their zone with an extra player to potentially score the game-winning go-ahead goal, we had to spend killing off a penalty. And let's not act like we're going to score on the penalty kill, because despite being the most penalized team in the league, we are yet to score a jailbreak. I know you're going to say, well, actually, Boston has more penalties, but look at a per game basis. Penalties per game, we are at 3.6. We've got the highest in the league. No one takes more penalties per game than us. Every game you can bet on us taking 3 to 4 penalties. And I think we have 18 power plays in 9 games. So we average 1.5 more penalties. Not penalty minutes. Penalties. We're averaging almost 3 minutes a night in the box more than our opponent. And you look at a close game like this. You look at the close game against Montreal. Now, I know penalties weren't costly as much there, but it's just more that if you are not going to play 5-on-5 hockey because you've got somebody in the box, you can't be surprised at losing these tight games. Because even if, yes, a few games ago, I was upset with our penalty kill. They were lower in the league. Our penalty kill's been looking really good so far. I have to admit, like, our special teams has improved on the penalty kill. And on the power play, on our 1 power play, we did get a goal. Objectively, this was a good game from our special teams. But our special teams shouldn't have been out there on the penalty kill that much, especially when we only draw 1 penalty. And it's not to say that there weren't other times where I thought Boston could have been called. But I think, like, look, we're the most penalized team in the league. We're also the least, like, power played team in the league. We're at the bottom. So it's not like we play a, high intensity game where, it's physical, both sides. We get lots of penalties. They get lots of penalties. That's just the brand of hockey we play. We play a brand of hockey where we take a whole bunch of penalties and don't draw a whole bunch of penalties. And guess what? In a game like that, we scored on the power play. Maybe that second power play would have made the difference. Would have won us the game. I think that we need to, I don't want to say we should flop, Because no, I'm never gonna argue in favor of that. I think flopping is something terrible in sports. It ruins sports, like when you have that. But I am gonna say, if there should be a penalty, be damn vocal about it. Say, hey, the stick clipped me here. Their stick was in between my legs. That's why I fell down. Be very vocal about it. And if a call is made on you when they got away with something earlier in the game, be vocal about it. Say, what do you mean you're calling that on us? They've been getting away with stuff all night, and this happens every night. And I'm not going to blame the refs here. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, Boston got away with a whole bunch. I don't think that the penalties we got were necessarily egregious. And I don't think that, the non-calls on Boston were, like, especially egregious. Like, if they called it on Boston, I think that it would have been, like, ticky-tacky, But either clean up your game or say, hey, look, we get that we're a really, a more aggressive team, but call a ticky-tacky call on the other team if you're going to put us in the box 4 times a night. But here's the thing, we're putting ourselves in the box 4 times a night. That's the real problem. It's not like every ticky-tacky call that they can make on us, they make on us, but they don't make on other teams. It does sometimes happen, but really, we go in the box because we should be in the box. Because we committed a penalty. And we commit penalties at a rate higher than every other team in the league. But we get power plays at a rate lower than every other team in the league. And then you look at a game like this and you're like, just imagine what 6 extra minutes of 5-on-5 could have done for us. 6 extra minutes. Or at least 6 extra minutes of 5-on-5 / us having the power play. 6 extra minutes of teams being on an even playing field. Because I'll tell you, based off of the first 3 periods, I think if you gave us an extra 6 minutes of 5-on-5 hockey, I think Ottawa would have scored. Overtime, it was overtime. It was an Ottawa overtime game. Come on. We had a great chance. I believe it was Emily Clark. And here's the thing. I had it in my head what I was going to say if we won this game. I spent the whole game not speaking it into existence because every time I speak it, it doesn't happen. But I was thinking, what would be nice? Getting our first ever 4-game winning streak by snapping the overtime curse. That would be sweet. Even when Boston tied, even when it went to overtime, there was a part of me that was hopeful. That was like, oh, that'd be beautiful. This would be one of my favorite videos to make if that is how the game went. And when we had that 2-on-1, I thought it was real. Nope. Bad giveaway in our own end. I don't want to say that we screened our own goalie because Boston parked themselves there, but also we put ourselves in a situation where Boston could park themselves right in front of our own goalie, and we had to go there to try and counter, and they rip one home, game over 2-1. I get that it's a new season, and our roster is different. We have some new key players. I don't think this is the same team as last year, but 1-9 past regulation. 0-5 in games that ended in overtime. Specifically, we are nearly a third of the way to our second season. We have not won an overtime game. And it's not like last year was an especially short year in terms of games. 24 is still a lot. We are approaching game number... This was game number 33, okay? 33 games. 10 went to overtime or shootout. And out of those 10, we won 1 game in a shootout, lost 4 in a shootout, and lost 5 in overtime. See what I mean where I'm like, what team is this? Is this a new team? different team, or is this the same old team from last season? Because on the one hand, we've looked a lot better. Even look at where we are in the standings. I think that we're in a better spot than before. We're in a third place. We're in a fairly comfortable third place. We look good. If I do power rankings, okay? If you follow the PWHL Reddit, I'm one of the people that does the power rankings. And right now, I think Tier 1 is Minnesota and Montreal. I think that is a pretty strong first tier. Then I think Tier 2, it's Ottawa, New York, and Boston. And Ottawa is pretty significantly at the top of that tier. And then Tier 3 right now is Toronto. Again, I'm not going to count them out because I counted them out last year, and look at what happened. They've had a rough start. They had a rough start last year. I won't start counting Toronto out until, honestly, like late in the season. I'd say, okay, maybe if by game 20, after 20 games, if they have 19 points and the team ahead of them is ahead of them by 12 points and they are in 6th place, if all 3 of those conditions are met, then I'd say, okay, their season's cooked. Like, they're done. Because there's a lot of season left. Regulation wins are 3 points. Like, they play us. And they win those games. And they can just slingshot ahead of us. So, games are worth a lot. So, I'm not going to count anybody out. But right now, I think we've played well. I think we've looked good. I like where we are in the standings. And while it does stink that Boston gained some ground, we have a game in hand on them. And they only gained 1 point, and we're still ahead of them. And there's still a New York buffer between us and them. Objectively, like, we're in a decent spot. We're heading towards the 1/3 mark of the season. We should be in a playoff spot a third of the way through the season. That's good. But this game reminds me of last season, because I saw this story play out 10 times now. And only one of them did I like the ending. And last season, I saw it play out 8 times. I really want an OT win, okay? And I know that overtime wins technically aren't, the best, because you're giving your opponent a point and you're losing a point. It's not just like the NHL where the loser point manifests out of thin air. Every game's worth 3. If you win in overtime, you have taken one of those 3 points you would have gotten and said, don't want it. Here you go, other team. I want the OT win, okay? 3-on-3 overtime hockey is super fun and exciting. And I've been to every home game for the Charge, and I have yet to stand up in celebration of an overtime win. I've also watched every away game, and guess what? I still haven't gotten to celebrate an overtime win. I'm thinking that the first time, like, it's a really, truly, properly celebrate an overtime win is a situation of, like, oh, if Boston loses in any fashion, Ottawa makes the playoffs, and Minnesota beats them in overtime. But at the same time, they played well with their backup. I see cracks, and that scares me. Taking too many penalties. Not getting enough power plays, losing in overtime yet again, and not scoring. We've never scored more than 3 goals this season. We got to get that scoring touch. And again, the thing that stings is I know how capable this team is. I know that on the best nights, they can compete with the best teams in the league. They can give any team a run for their money. But sometimes they find a way to lose games. And again, this season they found ways to win games that last season they wouldn't have won. I think that Toronto game is a perfect example. That Toronto game where we won 2-1, minute 10 left in the game to win, that's a loss last season. That's an OT loss. That has OT loss written all over it. So I'm kind of in this weird place. Happy with our performance, but it could be better. Our next game's crucial. Super crucial. I think we need a win. But I want them to get that monkey off their back. Like, I'm actually right now okay with not getting the full 3 points if it means an overtime win, so that it's out of the way early in the season. Because part of me wonders if that plays a role. We've never won in overtime. Oh, here we go. Get that off the back early in the season. Because if we win, say, our next game in overtime, and you look at our season, a 1-2 record after regulation, that's fine. That's normal. Lots of teams. That's fine. 0-3, you're getting a little stressed, and then you look at the grander picture of 1-11, you're like, uh-oh, not good. I think we need a win, but I want an OT win bad. And that's the thing. This game proved they're capable. They could do it. That 2-on-1, that could have been the game. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen that we get puck to stick, or stick to puck and puck to twine. It's going to happen. Just got to keep believing. And I do want to emphasize, I believe in this team. I believe we could be contenders. Just can't let those little things slip us up. And as always, go Ottawa, go.